week.
So the dreaded government shutdown, defunding Obamacare, crazy times going on down. If C-SPAN is actually pretty entertaining right now. If you want, you need something to watch, you can put on
If you have a
some
sixth
C-SPAN.
sense of humor, I guess it is.
Yeah, but
Isn't this their 42nd attempt to
Right.
defund it? 42 is the magic number in the Douglas Adams books.
Well, I thought 27. Oh, that's when rock stars die.
Yeah, 27 is when rock stars die. Unfortunately, it's not when initiatives to defund Obamacare die.
Has the Reverend Farrakhan weighed in on numerology on this issue yet?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question.
Okay.
I'm sure there's also all kinds of conspiracy theories involving the Merovingians as well. If you're listening out there at home, please Google Merovingian.
Oh,
Please.
my.
But yeah, this is the 42nd House resolution of some sort to attempt to defund Obamacare. It's not going to go anywhere. Hugh Hewitt is quoted as having said they know it's not going to go anywhere, but they're trying to build lists of people who are going to vote for them in 2014 and 2016.
Well, I get a kick out of the Mr. Rubio attempting to recast himself post-immigration debate as a born-again conservative. If all of these characters, just as they ooze between images and positions and talking points, as they work themselves across trying to, the ultimate cliche, please everyone at the same time, accomplish nothing. It's kind of fun to watch the political chameleons at work.
Yeah, and you can only get away with that while you're a candidate. Because when you're a candidate, you can speak in vague platitudes that let people think that you agree with everything. Hey, this guy speaks to me. This lady really gets what I'm all about. This is my candidate. And then once they get into office and they have to actually start making decisions and they start accumulating a record, then you can see, okay, this person isn't the liberal or the conservative candidate of my dreams. They're making hard decisions, and they're not necessarily the decisions I want them to make. And that's a generous assessment. It may not be that they're making hard decisions. It may be that they had an agenda all along that they weren't really sharing with us.
There you go.
But it can go either way.
Well,
but politics is an ugly, ugly business.
Well, speaking of candidates, one of the mantras for this show is that we intend to bring people on who want to espouse ideas. We are going to be covering very closely the political events that transform Rhode Island both on a local and a national level over the next few years. People talk about the challenges Rhode Island has faced over the last 10 years. I think they pale in comparison to what we're the living, breathing driver's ed movie we're about to engage in here.
The last prom.
Exactly. Carrie. But I want to say this. I want to make this perfectly clear. We are going to be devoid and free of handicapping races here. The conventional media obsesses over not what the issues are, but how the issues might affect on a short attention span theater basis, all right, the voting public at that very moment, and ultimately what's happening in the numbers of the race as opposed to why we should support someone in the race.
Right. Or who's raising the most money.
Exactly.
Yeah, who's raising the most money? Will candidate X's minor gaffe trash them at the polls? What?
How are they appealing to this particular public interest group? Are they appealing to this particular
who's the next election's soccer mom demographic replacement going to be?
I'd like to say only in America, but what's fascinating about the human condition is we can have the media preach to us exactly how something is going to impact our decision process, and at the same time allow it to affect our decision process.
Right.
So in saying so, I'd like to introduce our first guest this year, as far as a candidate. I'd like to welcome Jonathan Maciel, a Rhode Island native who is running for the 1st congressional seat as an independent. Welcome to the coalition. Why don't you tell us about yourself, about your race, kind of your goals and ideals. Give us a little bit of a background and welcome to the show.
All right, thanks for having me, guys. Really glad to be here. Short introduction about myself. Right now I work as an IT systems engineer for Marshall McLennan's company. That's up in Franklin, Massachusetts. It's about right up the road from where I live, about 20 minutes up the street. But so a little short, brief introduction. I started getting into politics more when I was in charge of the executive board for the Student Government Association, Lindsay College. During that time, you're required to go to your local town halls see how the situation is going for the community, and make sure that the college is working hand in hand with the community. Entertaining our national senators, particularly Bernie Sanders. I absolutely love the guy. Would come up about once a semester to speak to the students at the school, and about once a year go down to the Vermont state offices and sort of beg them not to increase the cost of our education anymore. And at that time, that was Governor Douglas and Lieutenant Governor Doobie. And I guess I was able to, year after year, instead of them increasing it by 4%, it'd go up by 3%. So, whatever you can do at that point. And what motivated me to say that the system's when I really started to notice the system was in deep trouble was, and I admit, 2008, I voted for Barack Obama. Okay, I voted for Obama. And a few days after he was sworn into office is when I realized, okay, the system's broken. Is when he named Secretary of the Treasury Timothy Geithner and a comedy star Larry Summers. You knew game over. Wow. If anyone doesn't know who they are, check out the Larry Summers memo about the World Trade Organization. Gives you a hint about what these guys stand for.
That was in the news quite a bit the last few weeks.
Yeah.
That it's one of the things that got him to withdraw his application.
Essentially, the Democrats who weren't bought by the finance industry threatened to literally revolt against the president, anything he wanted to do for the rest of his term. Right. That's what they told me.
There's a point where you can't keep nominating foxes to guard the hen house and expect people to be happy about it.
Yeah, I missed Jack Reed's objections to that. Did I miss something there?
I think he stayed quiet to see which way the wind was blowing.
He was getting married at the time. So.
Again? Renewing his vows?
But so you're as a student, you got intimately involved in the political process,
right?
So you have a real background in some of the bedrock stuff that influences politics,
right?
So and sensing the and the Geithner, for reasons beyond the fact that the guy is a tax avoider, it was just appalling to progressives as well as folks like myself who are self-described libertarian. All of a sudden we started to see it was the same old. But anyway, continue. Tell us then the next step.
All right. So at this point, I did listen to last week's show. I did enjoy it. I wouldn't say necessarily about first-time candidates running because of. People think of ego and they think of the negative sides of it. But if you have ego, you have to have some kind of ego, because if you have that, you're going to have pride that comes along with it. If you're not proud of your community, your state, your nation, you're not going to be able to represent it efficiently. If the only thing you're worried about is yourself, you're going to get more of the same of what we have now. And I think that the fact that we're more concerned, our current politicians are more concerned about where is their next campaign fundraising going to be, when's the next time they can buy a vote, and on top of that, they're wondering what's Goldman Sachs going to say if we do this?
Which industry is going to stop funding me and start funding my opponent if I...
Exactly. It's become more... And Andrew Jackson made a summary about that when he was president. Started to realize that his representatives in the House were more concerned about their own campaigns and their own careers than they were about the people that they were supposed to be representing. So it's not like this is a new thing.
No, and there's probably not an easy solution to it.
There is no easy solution. It's not a matter of getting money out of politics. Even if you didn't have political parties, you would still have that problem. Political parties just makes it a little easier to organize thoughts in a group.
Right. Well, I'd like to see us move to an instant runoff type of election that would allow third-party candidates a little more of a chance to build some headway. Yeah, we would be better served if we had some libertarians and some real greens and some progressives and an assortment of people, rather than having these big mushy coalitions all sort of, what exactly is a Democrat now? What exactly is a Republican?
And what's weird to me, and it seems to me, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, it's that something that the mainstream media tries to put on the back burner is that both in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts, unaffiliated, as far as registered voters, is the largest voting bloc.
Right.
And that seems to, there's always this talk of, Democrats and Republicans and the typical stuff. And there's never really much talk about who's going to, as an unaffiliated, hop into whatever primary they'd like to, or the fact that that is actually the largest on the books voting bloc.
Well, we're the state of the independent man, so...
And as a state, let me just throw this in here for some red meat. As a state and as a country, we spend so much money, time, effort on ensuring that the structure for both the Democratic and the Republican parties stays intact, whether it be funding primary elections, whether it be supporting national conventions, and yet...
And debates.
And from the get-go, the independent candidate is given short shrift.
Right. Independent candidates can't get into debates. Even ones that have a strong tailwind behind them.
Right. And which is particularly galling since the last time I checked, the spirit of the FCC is that the public owns the airwaves.
Right.
Kind of a shock, eh?
Right.
But continue. Tell us more about your platform and where you're coming from in terms of substantive ideas.
Right. So right now, Rhode Island is a smart group. They really are a smart group of voters. And going back to what he's saying about the largest group being unaffiliated, when we have 80 to 85% of a Republican Party that's controlled by elite wealth and elite corporation, and between 55 and 60% of the Democratic Party controlled by big finance, what are your choices?
The powdery wigs.
Right.
Exactly. What are your choices? So, and I think that's why they stay particularly unaffiliated. They play by a campaign-by-campaign basis.
Yeah, and I think in a state where you can vote in either primary and short-term affiliate and then disaffiliate on your way out of the polls, it does make sense because you want to see where your vote is actually going to count.
Right. So I think Rhode Islanders, even today, I know this was a big concern 5 years ago, but it's still a big concern today, is that primary concern is with your jobs, your wages, the livelihood of your families, and that's really my primary focus right now going into this campaign. And I think that through the negotiations of NAFTA, the North America Free Trade Agreement, the World Trade Organization, now we have our wonderful Trans-Pacific Partnership coming along. We've allowed literally the mass exodus of millions upon millions of jobs out of this country. And it isn't just jobs, it's all of our wealth too. Because if all of this is being produced overseas, you buy it from, say, Walmart, that money is being shipped overseas.
Right, or even other corporations, they establish footholds in other countries so that they don't have to bring their profits back to the U.S.
Right, and the thing is, when if people remember the back in the late 90s when the World Trade Organization was being first negotiated, the big promise was that it was gonna increase American exports. It was going to be good for us, and I guess they didn't completely lie to us because it did lead to the great export of our jobs and our wealth. So it did increase our exports.
The big companies that are able to take advantage of cheap labor overseas are very happy with it.
Exactly, and
it's helping them.
And this is what it was being financed. And this is exactly what's going on in the Trans-Pacific Partnership right now.
Yeah,
and it's being catered exactly to that group. And I think we really need to completely gut these broad, as I call them, fake trade agreements. Fake trade agreements, because it's not about trade. It hasn't been about trade. Well, we really need to go on a country-by-country basis, because sometimes it is about trade. We have countries like Canada, Australia, Japan, Britain, Germany, a number of our EU nations that have similar wages, similar lifestyles to America. They make things that we like. For example, someone might like a Volkswagen better than they would a Ford.
Well, I really enjoy their new ad.
All right.
So if I were in the market for a new car, I'd probably be considering it.
Exactly. So you have this situation where it can make sense to go over there, especially producing goods in an area where you're doing business overseas. It's really expensive to ship your stuff across the Atlantic or across the Pacific. So it might make sense to open a plant there if you're distributing there. But what I'm talking about, what's really bothering me, is when our businesses are producing goods in these cheap labor countries, pennies on the dollar, just to ship these goods back to the U.S. for the sake of increasing their profit margins.
Right, and I'll also point out that many of these countries with cheap labor, the labor is being abused.
Exactly.
It's not like you're helping a third world country lift itself up from poverty. These people are still making crap wages.
It's not just wages; it's living conditions, working conditions.
Yeah, like they're often in a work camp where they can't leave, or
suicide nets at the iPhone factory.
Right. This is going to sound crazy coming from a libertarian, but people need to remember there is no EPA in China.
And there's no EPA in Bangladesh.
Yeah. There's no EPA. There's no safety inspections. We've got the Triangle Shirtwaist clothing factory issue happening there all over again.
Right. So essentially, companies spend a great deal of time and effort chasing whatever tiger economy is left. The irony, of course, is that we're gradually running out of places to have tiger economies.
Right.
So what do you suggest then? What can we do I'm a free market guy. Without crucifying the free market, what can we do substantively to